Yeah, hello everyone, and here is today's committee meeting, and we've got lots of people here today. And today we have two prepared issue that we would like to discuss. One of the issue is one of the issue is about to continue discussing about the application catalog, which was proposed by Daniel 2 weeks ago, and we have made some edits and some progress on that proposal. And I think we will have a more detailed discussion today. And this is the first part of today's meeting. And the second part is that we have just finished the performance testing for KubeVela in version 1.8, which covers lots of scenarios. And we have prepared some blogs and reports for discussing the details of the performance of KubeVela controller. And we have submitted to the CNCF blog, and I think you will be able to see it on CNCF's official website like 2 weeks later. And also we will post it on our official documentation site. So the second part today, I will give a brief introduction for the blog, and you can see the preview version of it. Okay, so let's start with the first part. And Daniel, are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, let me share it.
Cool.
Let me know you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So, well, this is just to go through some of the comments and updates that have been made to the document based on what we talked the last time. So this is still the same document. I have just added some changes in here. So my idea will be like try to go on each of the changes to see if it solves, let's say, the initial issues, or if it needs further discussion or things like that. So changes are in blue just to be easier to track at this point. There were some discussions. Let me go also through the different comments to see if all those are okay. This was about, where does, this is just a mention of this should be part of the Vela UX, or how are you going to be integrated with other stuff. I think this is covered also in how we see the interaction among platforms and catalog. So yeah, I would close that for now. Okay, so let me find the next one. I have added some data about parameterization and things like that. And yes, the first one was this. I updated it to include some entities in here about not entities, about the main purpose. Something that we discussed the other day was that this application metadata could also be useful to be created in the cluster itself, just to maintain the metadata about the application itself. So I think it was a good idea. I still maintain that. Yeah, I think it could be something quite nice. And my initial idea will be like, we should try to define how we are going to link the application metadata with the application itself, but probably it will be just something like kind of matching application names or something like that initially. I also read these comments today about whether those are necessary or not. I agree. I think that probably this becomes redundant. Like if we need to perform the check or to inform the user about it, I 100% agree with removing all of these, because at the end of the day, we can go through the different entities. So if everybody's okay, I will plan to remove this.
Actually, I think as for this issue, I actually prefer to leave this message outside the application, because as far as the application by far we used in KubeVela, those informations are mainly for the runtime information. those informations are required for KubeVela's controller to handle those applications. But those requirements, as you listed here, like the dependency of the traits and the policy, and also some system requirements, which I think would be some restrictions before we applying that application into the cluster. So once the application has successfully entered the cluster and stored in the etcd, and I think those requirements or the system requirements are not necessary for application to carry. But it is true that if we would like to add some like URL or documentation link or logo information, it is possible to add it to the annotation of the application directly. Yeah.
Okay, so your proposal is to have this, let's say, enforced from the point of view of the catalog, like it is supported by the catalog application metadata, but when we create the application metadata itself, we don't treat these parameters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more like a behavior on the client side instead of the server side. So it's just my opinion, but I think it's okay if you carry it on the applications application object, because it does not have any side effect. Only the application becomes a bit larger, but that's not too much overhead. Yeah.
Okay. So let's keep the discussion open. I will keep them. I mean, I understand your point, and I also think this is probably related to the initial thoughts about this. This is kind of more clear beforehand on the client without needing to process anything. So okay, let's keep it. I just correct this. You're correct. That was lowercase. Yes, all of these are optional fields. So initially, I mean, we should define what will be like the required parameters in here when we do the final design. But my guess will be like name should be required. And we should discuss probably about licenses. I think that could be a good idea to put that as a requirement and probably a URL, but I think we can be very open about mainly having almost anything as optional and treat it like that if you are okay with that, if everybody's okay.
Yes, Daniel. I'm Jianbo. I also share the catalog proposal to many of our end users in China, and they also share lots of opinions on this application metadata. Not only these informations, they also have lots of other entities such as the price unit and the application maintainers and the company behind the application and other information such as the application catalog and the application labels. And I think the application metadata is very opinionated information, and we must provide extension fields for them. I also read the discussion at the last in the proposal. Yes, I think
because to give other people like the context. Please continue.
This design is good. So we just need to define which fields are required and some optional and most commonly used fields, and other opinionated fields can be inside the extension fields such as the instance metadata.
Yeah. So just one clarification, maybe I didn't get you like the last time. So if I understood you correctly, like you think that there should be, probably based on what you have just said, we should have kind of an open metadata. Like I thought about this in terms of the instance that we are deploying on the platform, but probably what you just mentioned about company, for example, or pricing or things like that, is more about the application, not the instances of it, right?
Yes, this should be an application method, not an instance. But some of the information also application related, not the instance related, such as the application maintainer, the developer company of the application. These are not instance related.
Okay. Okay, I understand what you mean. Okay, we need to. I need to think, or we need to think about namings, because I don't particularly like this name in here, but it was just to create a discussion around it. I understand what you meant. I will try to get something in here related to this, to try if we can find a couple of names, or maybe a name just to get these extensions, so that, yeah, every platform can freely increase the metadata as we need it without requiring to redefine the whole spec, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I will take note of that. Yeah, let's try to get this in the next iteration. But I agree with you. I think it will be quite useful to have a place for people to define like what is this application. I just thought initially about, yes, mainly like having at least a URL or something to go for help, description and things like that. But you are correct. I mean, owners, pricings, and things like that are also going to be required at the end.
Yeah, yes. Even I think it's not just key value pairs. There can be more rich for entities such as slice or map, stream maps, because different fields have different meanings. For example, the catalog should be a string lines in that represents the application catalog, or just the logo you mentioned. It should be a slide that contain a structure.
Okay. I will try to amend this. Let me know if you have something that comes to mind, so we can also go fast on this. But thanks. Yeah, I think we should change it. I agree with you. Okay, cool. So, yeah, is there any other comment about this? Okay. Just if anybody comes thinks about anything else, just jump into the call. I will continue with it, so I don't get like the full time by myself again. So yeah, there was also another discussion about the layout and the usefulness of having raw Kubernetes entities and things like that. I tried to clarify like why it is useful and how we should proceed to basically inform users about, hey, this is what we like to do, and this is something that you shouldn't do. I don't know if everybody has time to read it. If everybody is okay with this approach, we can close on this. And this. Well, there was also a comment here, which is related to this particular aspect. So I'm sorry, I didn't get it before. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like, for me, when I think about this, I kind of imagine something like in this sense, like having a metadata, README, an application, and maybe another YAML in here. This should be kind of like complex use cases or something like that, that they are not forbidden, but we don't encourage them. So I agree with you on this.
Okay.
I have another idea for this part, because I see that Zhongpei has said that the config map and secret distribution is kind of pretty useful in our cases, because we have seen that like users have some may have some credential data or some configuration data that should not be embedded directly in the application, which might cause some information leak. So, but as for that scenario, I think on Vela UX there is another function that we have developed, which is called the configuration management. And I think the intuition of that function is like to manage those like credential data or some configuration data. So I think if the resources are mainly for the config map or secret, if their usage is to manage some extra configuration for that application, I think we might need to seek some ways to connect these entities stored here with the configuration management we have in place in the Vela UX. And also, I think Vela Core also have the similar capability, but we do not embed it into the application part directly for now. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know about that part. Related with this, I'm trying to do kind of a proof of concept for a secret trait, but I'm kind of in a lot of things at the same time. I think that for many people, I will share the idea in here, even it is not related with this. I think it could be useful to have kind of a trait that automatically generates secrets. Like, so basically the secret is generated randomly and you can set it in your application, and it's not the best in the sense of, yeah, you can still go to the secret and read it and so on, but at least you don't write anything down in the application definition. It will be something like, you just say, I want to generate a secret with these keys, and these keys become populated with a random string of some sort that satisfies the concept that we have, right? Just to think about it. Okay, okay, let's continue. Oh, that is also a good point, like whether this is going to be recycled or not. I think this is quite interesting, and I think we should have kind of a further discussion probably on how we do this or not, because maybe we need to create some type of annotation or something in the Kubernetes entities to link the life cycles. Like if somebody creates a config map and we remove the application, what happens to that config map? To don't leave things alone there. So yeah, I think this is a good point, and yeah, I need to go on this. We need to go on this, but probably we should kind of, or either list them as a kind of inventory, or probably just annotate them. I don't know if there are any other approaches to support this, but for sure, I think it should be able to, like if you remove the application, you should have a clean environment, the same as you created before. So yeah, we need to go on this.
Okay, I see. So actually, I raised this issue is because, from my perspective, I think if we treat it as part of the application, or we need to recycle it or upgrade it once the application is changed, then I think it's part of the desired state of the application, which should be encoded in the application's application itself directly, but there is some exceptions we have already made in the add-on part, because for example, when you install some add-on, there might be some trait definition or component definitions that are installed into the cluster, accompanied by the application instead of directly embedding it in the application. And those definitions are uninstalled when the add-on is disabled. So So to this point, I think there might be some scenarios that we still need to make them outside the application, even though they are need to be recycled with the same life cycle as the application. Yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, we should we should try to investigate like how people can link that if they want to. And then we can discuss whether that's like the normal use case or this is just the exception. But yeah, I agree with you. Okay, so cool. So this was like discussion around the layout itself. And then I try to clarify how I see like the interaction between the deployment platform and the catalog itself. Think about the platform as KubeVela plus Vela UX and how you can basically interact with the platform, right? So I thought of two different methods that they have different pros and cons. Method one is basically platform behaves as a middleman in between the catalog and the user. So if we think about going to Vela UX and listing applications, you will get to the Vela UX, you will click on list application, you will put a query, for example, you will retrieve the matching application from the catalog. And if you want to deploy it, you will get like the application and then it will be deployed by the platform, right? I think this is kind of like this probably facilitates the integration, especially with web UIs and things like that. The only thing, as I see, is a rare use case, but it exists, is like what happens if this catalog is private somewhere else and this is a public platform in another place, but it's just a rare use case. The other approach will be like the catalog sends data to the platform. This could be useful for CLI applications, like if you want to interact with the catalog in itself, you can just say to the catalog, deploy a given application, and this is the target platform that I want to deploy to. It requires that the catalog and the platform understand how authentication is done so that the credentials are forwarded as required. And this enables this train use case and enables some CLI also use cases. So my first approach will be like, we should try to go probably with the method one, because it's going to be the easiest one to integrate. And it's also, I think it has a clear separation of responsibilities between platforms and catalogs. So I don't know what do you think? I think that could be like probably the first approach.
Sorry, you mentioned the disadvantage here in the first semester. I think it's hard to say. You can configure some credentials to access the private catalog, I think.
And the use case is more than credentials, is connectivity, like having the catalog in a private cluster that only has, say, only allows outgoing traffic, but not incoming from the cloud.
I see.
It's just this type of use case. It's not that common, understand? So it's more about connectivity and clients not wanting to configure VPNs or things like that, or opening inside clusters to the outside.
All right, I see that. Yeah, that's a problem.
The flow looks good to me. I just want to mention that we should follow the OCI format, because the format is just becoming a de facto standard.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me write it down here so we can. So we can increase this. Yes. I mean, we should be as standard as possible and don't reinvent the wheel. So I agree with you. I think that could simplify things and make reusing some tools even possible. So, okay. So next topic was about parameterization and how do we do it and how it is possible to do it. So in here, I just put an example of how we do it internally at Native. And the initial approach is more like once the platform receives the application, it analyzes like what are the people trying to deploy and parameterization happening there. So okay, there are like two use cases that we support actually. One of them is that somebody has already kind of a parameter file that they have and they want to apply the parameter file to the application. So that could be kind of a patching solution. The other one is that we present like the parameters to the people. And as you can see here, this is basically like the whole component part of the tree of an application, so that people are able to add and remove parameters or traits as needed. As the comment said, it would be nice to actually have a way to discover all of these. I think it is doable. It takes quite some effort, so that's why in our site it's more on the roadmap, on the feature roadmap. But I think it's doable. Like once you have the application, you can go to the component definition and detect which are the parameters and try to suggest them, if I understood your comment correctly. Well, okay. Yeah, so as I said, this should be more on the part of the platform. So try to split the responsibilities clearly and try to simplify the cataloging itself. And all of these I try to answer in the previous steps. And I think we already gone through them. The only thing that I need to work on is more on the backstage. I'm not that familiar with that add-on and plugin, so I'm not sure about like the specifics of it. But my understanding is that yes, we should be able to integrate it.
Okay, I think the backstage catalog we don't need to follow their format unnecessary. We just need to refer to that design and consider their fields.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if you have a link to those, you can please add it to the comment. I can add it to the document.
Oh, sure, I will.
Thanks. Yeah, and that will be like all the changes basically. So based on today's discussion, the thing will be like try to extend and clarify like what do we want in application metadata, trying to define some structure for common things like probably company ownerships and things like that. Have some open fields that can be extended by platforms and people as they wish, and also work on how do we link these extraneous entities in here, and what is the relationship with the life cycle of this application. And yeah, I will try to advance on this as soon as possible, and hopefully we'll be ready for the next community call.
Sorry, Daniel, that
Yeah.
about the parameters question, that how can we fill different parameters when we deploy the application? Maybe I just missed that your point.
Oh, so our initial approach, I think the simpler approach is for people to just edit like the raw YAML file. Like
Oh, I see.
If you see here,
I
this is just an step of you take just the component section from the YAML and you just allow people to touch this. That will be like version 0, let's say. It's not the best, but it's usable and people can change and alter things. This probably is not the best example, but in some of our applications, we have comments in here so that also people understand like, hey, uncomment this field if you need this and this and this feature. Okay. Let me.
I understand your idea, and I think it makes sense to me.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Let me.
Does that mean we expose all the applications to all the users? Is this too much pressure on them?
Not like that. We can just use the Vela UX to show the application in the UI format. And I agree that the application user should understand the application metadata, because in the OAM background that we have already make the abstraction for user that we should let the end user know what the fields mean.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, but that means they know the application fields, right? Yes, but they have to focus on all the fields instead of the several, pick the fields that the developer has set.
Yes, I think we can't select parts of them because in the KubeVela add-on design, we have already do another templating work. But in the application catalog, I think we can let the end user to know what the application should be.
Yeah, okay.
At least it can be the initial design, and we can make it open to more people, and we can get more input and feedback on this design.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like consider this version 0, first iteration, but basically we can build on top of this like more intelligent approaches to try to get the different fields or only the ones that just have been set by the application, the one that define the application or things like that.
Yes, we have learned a lesson on the add-on design.
Okay, cool. So yes, as I said, I don't know if you also see this question here, but basically, yes, you can have this type of comments when people edit the fields, and you can also have different elements in here for people to understand like, hey, this is the password that you need to change. This is what it does. Please refer to this documentation for more info. Even if this is just an initial approach, I think a lot of people are finding it quite useful.
Do you have lots of questions on this design when user use it? Do they have lots of questions about the fields, such as what does the environment mean, or what the password in the environment should be?
Well, I will say like, as usual, you will have a lot of people that just click on deploy and that doesn't read any other value. and it will go through the different errors. For example, if something is mandatory or something like that. On the other hand, I think it's more like documentation and people understanding what this is. But for sure, it's a challenge to try to make people understand like how you are using your definition. So I think that in following iterations, it should be something more, let's say, structured and organized in the sense of, hey, this is an image, this is an environment variable and things like that. But for now, it combines like you have a version that is potentially complete, even if it's difficult for some people, instead of having just a limited view and doesn't allowing people to touch any other parameter or adding a trait, for example.
Okay, because I'm asking this question because I just curious about the question Zhongpei mentioned, that if it's too much burden for the end user to just use an application, an already built application to deploy, but he just want to customize some of the fields. But it's really a hard question that everyone have different opinions.
Yeah, I think that sometimes I find it sometimes that the problem in itself is like, what does it mean? Like, what does an environment variable means for a particular image or something like that? Like, what is the impact and the effect? And this is something more like on the documentation side of that environment variable in itself. It's not even on the structure of the application. So yeah, I think this is like something that we will eventually be able to have a nice documentation on this and be able to even document, as I say, like, hey, what this environment variable mean for my application.
Yes, but I think your solution really makes sense because you have already give their answer that if you don't want to care about the parameters, you can just use the application as its default like. Or you should care about all these fields. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we do, but that depends as always, is the same with health chance and things like that. We try to get default parameters that make sense for people to understand the application and is a working solution as a working application. But people will upload things that may not work if you don't change anything in particular. But at some point, you cannot control like what people is going to do with their application.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So yeah. Anyway, if somebody else has any questions, suggestions, comments, anything, just add them to the document or add it to the KubeVela channel, and I will keep an eye on that.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. And I think if anyone has any questions for the application catalog design, we can leave it on the Google Doc. And also it's free to discuss it in the Slack channel. And also, Daniel, I think that like if you want to have like more frequent discussion for this design, I think we can have a Slack channel thread to discuss it more frequently because like we have bi-weekly meeting now, so the design might get some response only every 2 weeks. So it depends on you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking on that. I will try it, but the last couple of weeks has been quite all right. So I didn't have that much time for this. So yeah, hopefully we can have further discussion down the line also quite fast.
Yeah. It does not need to be hurry. Yeah, just take your time.
Never mind, Daniel. It itself is a hard thing that we don't need to make such hurry. We just I think even we want to make it move advance. We at least should discuss 2 or 3 rounds for the design. We can't make it a rush.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and one of the benefits we have the discussion every 2 weeks because is that like we have another like Chinese community meeting every 2 weeks, just as an alternative to the committee meeting here. So like next week, we will discuss the similar issue and on the Chinese channel. So in that way, we may get more like end users feedback and their thoughts for the design. So I think that's one of the benefits to like increase more communication. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. And I think we've got lots of issue today, so I will go on quickly for the second part. Because the second part, if I discuss it in detail, it could also take a long time. And so I will just give a direct overview for that. Okay. Let me share my screen. Can you hear? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I have just share a link on the community meetings repositories issue, and you can click into the link and see the documentation, and also you can get it on the Slack channel as well. And this documentation is not officially released by now, so we recommend that to just review it, and you may add comments to it as well. But it is not, since it is not publicly released, so let's wait for another few more days until the CNCF blog has put it on it. Okay, so actually this documentation is quite long. And we have done many detailed experiments about the KubeVela's controller's performance under various scenarios. And there are some optimizations we have done in the version 1.8. And the official release of version 1.8 is about like 1 week later. And so if you want to conduct the load testing to test the KubeVela's performance under your scenario, there are also some guides for how to set up the load testing. For example, you can use the kubemark to mock Kubernetes nodes for it, and also you can use K3D or Kind to mock clusters to mock the virtual multi-cluster environment to test the performance of KubeVela under the multi-cluster scenario. And also there are some scripts that we have added it to the KubeVela's repo, which you can leverage it to deploy lots of applications quickly. And also we have some quick guides for you to choose parameters and also your system environments if you want to have a high performance application controller. For example, you can remove the let's see here. So you can enable the observability add-on such as the Prometheus and the Grafana part, which gives you a very comprehensive overview for the system's performance and also the application's running status. And also the load testing we have conducted below are mostly rely on these observability metrics and to judge what is the bottleneck of the system. And also you can remove the webhook, although webhook can help you to function something like to provide authentication and provide sharding, and also like to validate if your application is valid or not. But in some cases, you might have another layer of validation, and you do not necessarily need the validation webhook of KubeVela. So if you remove the webhook, you will get a much higher performance. And also we have the multiple shards enabled in not defaultly enabled, but you can enable it on your own in the version 1.8, in which way you can have like multiple controller running in your cluster. And you can see that like you can have multiple Vela core in your cluster, and each Vela core will take responsibility for part of the application. So you can have a horizontal scaling capability, and also you can reduce the the side effect if there is any exception happens to your system. Like only part of your application will fail if one of the controller fail. Okay, so after these parts, we also have some detailed optimization analysis in version 1.8. For example, we have made the parallelization for the state keep process, which can increase the performance of the controller when there is no updates to the application. And there are some detailed metrics shown here, like how much the latency can be reduced from this optimization. And also we have some like cache optimization. When you have really large number of applications, like you might have like tens of thousands of applications in your cluster. In that case, the cache optimization could be critical, because if you do not have that optimization, you might get a very high load of your controller, and also it might use up lots of memory for the controller and cause like OOM crash. So that's what we have optimized in version 1.8 as well. And also we have filtered some unnecessary updates, like the application status. There might have some like empty patch requests, and it might make your controller run slow if you have a large number of applications again. And also in multi-cluster cases where we leverage the cluster gateway to do the multi-cluster request proxy. And by default, we are leveraging the aggregated API layer of the Kubernetes API server. So that will add another round trip for the multi-cluster request. And we have tried to make the direct connection mode to let KubeVela controller to communicate with cluster gateway directly. And in our experiment, we have shown that this can be quite useful if you are using it in a very fast environment. And also this is a cache reduction we have mentioned above, and this is some details about how this technique is being developed, and also the performance shown here of this optimization. And finally, we've got lots of experiments under various scenarios. For example, we have set up the multiple shards environment and test if the horizontal scaling can help us to increase the capacity of the KubeVela system. And we have compared different configurations and show that like using multiple shards will not introduce too much overhead, but can make your system larger easily. And here is details of the analysis. And we have done load testing with continuous updates, because we have seen that users have not only deploy application, but they also make continuous updates to their application. Like one application can be like redeployed again and again. And we would like to see if those continuous updates will have some bad performance for the controller. And we found that there is some bottlenecks, and so that we developed some optimization tricks we mentioned above to solve that. Okay, and after that, we also have the multi-cluster load test, which we haven't done anytime before. And this multi-cluster test will show that, like, if you have two clusters, your control plane and your managed cluster have a long distance. For example, in this experiment, we set up KubeVela in China mainland, but we set up the managed cluster in Tokyo, so that there is relatively slow latency between those clusters. And we have seen that the controller's performance will drop. And there are some ways to make optimizations, and what you need to notice and look for if you encounter any performance issue under this scenario. And finally, we have aggregated all the optimization tricks, and the conclusion we achieved above and made a really large scale experiment. So in this part, we set up lots of managed clusters, like over 200 managed clusters with the use of K3D. And also we have multiple shards of controller. We have 5 very large Vela core controller running in the system, and have some all the optimization tricks enabled. And we deployed like over 400,000 small applications to the system and see if the controller can handle it. And the result is that we encountered some difficulties during the deploying of applications, but we managed to overcome those difficulties, like to reduce the overloads of the cluster gateway. And finally, we can successfully to hold up to 500,000 applications in that system, and only use a very reasonable amount of resources for KubeVela. So that shows that KubeVela is able to handle a really large fleet, and as if you have proper optimization tricks enabled. Yeah, so this is generally what we have done in like past 2 months, and we set up lots of large clusters to conduct this load testing. And I do not have too much time to include details for this experiment, but if you are interested in it, you can go for this documentation and see details. And finally, if you only care for how much resources we should set up for KubeVela's controller, for certain amount of applications, there is a quick table for you to have a brief overview. For example, after optimization, we are generally confident that if you only have like 3,000 applications, and those applications are not too giant, like one application contains like hundreds of resources, that would be too large to handle. But for medium-sized application, so for 3,000 application, it will be okay for you to use the default configuration of KubeVela, which is only like half of the core and only one gigabytes memory. And so if you have large number of applications, like to over 10,000 applications, you only need like two cores and 4 gigabytes for your KubeVela's controller. So unless you have a really large number of applications, you will have a lot of optimization space to use. And so generally, I think these parameters can handle lots of the scenarios you might encounter in KubeVela. So I think that's a very brief overview for the stability and stability assessment of KubeVela. And if anyone has any ideas, for example, how we should do more tests to test the performance under certain scenario, or if you find any bottleneck, you do not know how to optimize it, or you find some bottleneck that you want to make some optimization on the KubeVela's controller, I think it is completely open for you to raise that issue in the GitHub and in the Slack channel as well. Okay, so my sharing here is will stop here, and let's see if there's any questions for that.
Thanks to Inda. This is very solid work.
Seems like an amazing amount of work, so I will read through it. I love this type of analysis, so thanks for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Dine. This is great. This will help us also understand and do our own performance tests under our specific scenarios, and figure out where we could do better optimizations.
Yeah, cool. So if you encounter any other performance issue, you can just raise it, and we can look into it and see how those things can be optimized. Yeah.
This is Anup, by the way. I have one more question. Is this did you guys test with a Terraform controller, or for creating resources? I'm driving, so we haven't looked at the doc yet. What
so-
was the nature of the resource creation?
Yeah, so actually this load testing is mainly for the KubeVela's core controller. And we have tested with multi-cluster scenario, but I think the Terraform controller is not taken into account here. But I think some of the optimization tricks might be okay to migrate to the Terraform controller as well, because we have found some like memory optimization tricks that might not only work for the KubeVela's core controller, but also for other general controller as well. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, I think Anoop has mentioned a great point that Zhongpei, we can use the same performance test way that Inda has explored, and to do that work on the Terraform controller in the future.
Perfect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. And sorry, Daniel, is there performance problems you have met?
I'm sorry. Is that
That's Anoop.
No,
Yes,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry, so sad.
That's okay.
I think that's question from Guideware. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Question from Guideware or question to Guideware?
Yeah, I think it's bi-directional. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we've had some trouble with Terraform controllers with the jobs that create the resources, but it's failed for multiple reasons. So I can't put it entirely on the performance, but we'd like to see how we can reduce the amount of errors that we see with the Terraform controller with our experience, and we also need to do more testing on our side. So this was more like preemptive in a way to see if you're hearing any other performance issues on the Terraform controller, because that is going to be a big part into how we are using KubeVela. So it'll be awesome to have some performance numbers there.
Cool.
Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, that's important to do a load test both for the Terraform controller and that should be scheduled later.
But I want to mention that the Terraform controller is a bit different to the Vela core controller, because Terraform controller is invoking the cloud resources that maybe the cloud resource creating procedure will be the bottleneck. And I think we should test more about the error case, that if we have thousands of applications that have errors, what will happen on the Terraform controller when a correct application about Terraform resources were created? Will it work as expected?
That's fair. That's fair.
Cool. I think if there is no more question today, that will be the end of today's community meeting, and that's quite a quite long community meeting today. And I will upload the video later to the YouTube channel. And thanks everyone again. And if you have more questions you think of that you missed to mention it here, you can just raise it on the Slack channel as well. Okay, thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.